So you discussed a little bit earlier about memory patterns and people feeling certain discomforts, and it's associated with our memory patterns.
Yes.
Can you just go into a bit more depth about that?
Okay. When people experience certain symptoms, whether that's on an emotional level or a physical level, their bodies start to go into a little bit of a loop. Okay, and just say, for instance, you walk down the road and you twist your ankle. Okay, it's painful at that moment of time. Now, the body has the ability to repair and heal, but what happens is the next time you go outside, you start to work in a very adapted way, because on a memory pattern level, you're very wary of a weakness in that part of the body, or that you might injure yourself again. And it's in fact the memory patterns that hold us into place. So what I'm able to do with the treatment is actually release memory patterns on both cellular level and psychological levels. And when we look at it on a cellular level, it enables the body to repair to a far more heightened level and at a far better pace. But then on a psychological level, when we start to release memory patterns, it starts to affect our perception. Now, when I say release memory patterns on a psychological level, I don't mean that you're going to forget about the past.
Sure.
What I mean is your perception of an issue or of an experience in the past is what changes. So what happens is, rather than saying resonating as an issue, it just goes over your head.
And we've also talked a bit about what exactly you do. Now, you're talking about scanning, and there's a few other words coming in there. Is there any physical contact, if you like, besides just the scanning?
Okay, there are principally two main elements to our treatment. One is hands-on and one is hands-off. Obviously, when we scan the body, that's a hands-off experience. When we start to find the blockage points, we then go on to a hands-on technique. Well, when I say hands-on technique, this is for clients who have a clinic appointment, because we also do distance appointments, and it's a slightly different modified technique to that. So when clients come into the clinic and we've scanned their body, we'll find the primary point, we'll then, with the index finger, we will actually manipulate the points that are blocked. And as you will recall earlier, we don't work the body maps of the body because they assume that everyone is the same. So I'll work the points that are relevant to that particular person and what they require, and that is why we get to the root cause of the problem. So with my finger, literally, we use mild pressure and we manipulate those points. And those points are sensitive because they're blocked. Just like where you have an injury, they are painful. So we manipulate the blockage points. After we manipulate the blockage points, we'll then use a hands-off technique, which is what we call stretching energy. And literally, my hands will move away from their body, and the distance I will move away from the body is based usually on the size of the room. Obviously, if I'm in a 50-foot hall, I wouldn't necessarily stretch it 50 foot, but typically about 6, 8, 10 foot. And what that does is it causes an effect. So when I stretch the energy, that releases the memory pattern on both cellular and psychological levels. When I manipulate the point, that sends a signal to the brain between that point and the brain to activate or reactivate the healing repair mechanism between those 2 points and anything else that's connected to that particular point.
What this all sounds like to me, talking about scanning and manipulating points and everything, it's almost like defragging a computer, for example. Is what you're doing to a body is defragging.
Yes. Okay. I mean, obviously not everyone really appreciates what the word defrag means, but if anyone has a computer and anyone does service and maintain their computer, there is a software package on it which is called defrag, and what that does is it removes all the corrupted data and condenses everything else so it starts to work far more effectively and efficiently. And what we have to remember is our brains are like computers. You see, our brains are compartmentalized, okay, and we store information in the brain. And sometimes, just like a computer, it gets stored in the wrong folder. Sometimes a file gets corrupted. And it breaks down the communication in the body when that happens. Or it can't find the information that it needs to be actually able to actively do something with it. So yes, the body, with the process treatment we do, it does what is the equivalent of a defragmentation and brings order, removes the corrupted data. And then it allows our body to increase its ability to function far more effectively and efficiently.
You talk a lot about the emotion to physical,
Yes.
right? So you're talking about an emotional disorder which is causing a physical problem. Can you just explain a bit more about that?
All right, so it goes on very nicely to what we've just been talking about the compartmentalisation of the brain. I mean, I had a client this morning who, she had a very, very stressful week, and she came in and said to me, I'm just feeling so much in my shoulders, it's really unpleasant, it's aching, it's painful. Now, what we start to appreciate is when we start to not analyse, because analyse is actually the wrong word here, but when we start to appreciate the connections between one part of the body and, and the brain, we start to appreciate that when we store information in a particular region of the brain, each part of the brain is connected to another part of the physical body. So an issue came up in that lady's day, it gets stored, say, in that particular region of the brain which connects to her shoulder. And for the whole duration that issue is being stored in the brain, it breaks down the communication between that part of the brain and that physical part of the body. And therefore, on a cellular level, that body can't function effectively. So with the work that we do, with the hands-on and the hands-off technique, that releases the memory pattern and brings order on a cellular level, and also changes her perception on a psychological and emotional level simultaneously, without her having to address the situation. Because if I decide, okay, let's work on her shoulder, let's talk about her emotional issues going on in her stress at work, she's going to have to confront that. She might have to look at old histories of problems. And the last thing I want her to do is to have to start journeying down the past. So with our work, we don't do any cognitive therapy, okay? The past is the past. We can't change it. But what we can do is cause a shift in her system that has an effect on her perception of that issue and other aspects of her life without her having to confront them. So she doesn't get caught up in the fears and the frustrations of revisiting the past, having to deal with it now, and what the outcome is going to be. So a client will come for treatment, we'll do an element of work, and after a number of treatments, they would experience a shift on the day they wake up or they go to do an action and their perception has changed. As I said to you before, there is nothing permanent about what you think, what you know, what you do. It is just how your brain and your body is currently configured.